Hello everyone. Welcome to the live webcast. I just noticed I was talking without activating my mic. I'm sorry. I just noticed the comments from you and thanks for giving me the feedback. Sorry about the issue with the mic. I didn't notice my mic was not on. Perfect. Now I hope everybody is hearing me. Again, if you are having any audio or video issue during this webcast, make sure that you refresh your browser or you click on kind of reconnect so that you are back here and hearing us. And in case you still have issues, move to Google Chrome as your browser. But our team member is already here to help you with any technical difficulties that you have. Perfect, I'm seeing you here. Please go ahead and introduce yourself. Hello, Sanam, Navid, Joseph, Zia. Tell us where you are, from which country you are. Hello, Paul from Nigeria. Vale. Wow, we see a lot of people here. A big shout out to all of you. I'm so excited to have you all joining us on this webcast. And I'm so interested to talk about a topic that I'm passionate about. It's about earned value management. And in today's webcast, you know, if you're expecting me to go through metrics of EVM, probably that's not what you were expecting, because when I started on EVM myself, that was the thing I thought about EVM. I thought earned value management is just a set of metrics, but I was totally wrong. And to be honest, my perception of EVM shaped when I was getting ready for my PMP exam. And being an engineer, I love numbers, I love analytical stuff. And when I went to kind of the EVM section of the PMP exam, I really enjoyed that. And I thought EVM is just a set of metrics, a set of formulas that can be applied in projects, until I started applying EVM in a real project that I realized, no, I was absolutely wrong. It's not just a set of metrics. There are some fundamental principles that I need to have in place in order to make sure that EVM works in the projects that I was involved in. So today, in today's presentation, I'm going to talk about things that you probably don't hear much out there. Probably most of the EVM stuff that you've heard are EVM formulas or how to analyze EVM, things like that. So here we kind of have another perspective on EVM, something that helps you implement EVM on your projects and have the solid ground and foundation in place. Okay, sounds good. Just give me a shout out in the chat box and engage with me. I know it's kind of online, so I might not see you, but I see your comments. So as I talk, if you have questions, make sure that you ask your questions. If I ask a question, just answer throughout this webinar. Okay, now let me go to my slide and tell you what we have in place for you. First of all, I welcome you again to this webcast. I know we have many people showing interest on this webcast. Thank you so much for sparing time from your busy schedule to be here with us live. I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me. So thank you so much for being here. And about me, I am the founder and director of Project Control Academy and the creator of several comprehensive online training programs that are listed here. And also I had the blessing and honor of serving tens of thousands of professionals worldwide to take their project control skills to the next level. And if you have been following us, you know, we love sharing content and resources, either in the form of webinars or in the form of blog post videos. So if you have been following us, you know that it's just not about comprehensive trainings that we offer, but also our mission is adding value to the project control community. And that's one of the reasons we have this webcast today with you. Now, let me tell you what to expect in the next 1.5 hours that we are together. So first of all, I want you to know that if you are in this webcast, if you're spending time from your busy schedule, I want you to stay in until the end, because there are some things that we just offer to people who stay until the end or watch the replay until the end, so they get the reward of their commitment. So one thing that we started giving from probably January, I don't know exactly when, is giving you a copy of the slides, because in every presentation that we had, people were asking for the slides. So no worries, you don't need to make a screenshot or something. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy this training. We will provide you the full copy of the slides, but toward the end of this webcast. We will also give you 1.5 hours of PDUs, so you can claim if you're a member of PMI. Those are official PDUs that you can go. We will give you an activity code that you can go and claim. It's 1.5 hours. Again, that will be provided at the end, because we cannot give you something upfront if we don't know if you're attending the whole thing. And finally, we have, as usual, some special offer for webinar attendees. So these are for the ones who are going to stay until the end with us on this webcast. Now, what I'm going to cover in this session with you is, first of all, I'm going to open up the concept of earned value. For those of you who are not that familiar with earned value, you will have a kind of clear idea on what earned value management is all about. So that's one thing I will talk about. And I will show you through an example why EVM is such a robust method in managing your project. So that's another thing you will figure out in case you were not that exposed to EVM. And by the way, this webcast doesn't matter if you are experiencing EVM or if you're brand new to this concept. My mission here after this webcast is that you walk away learning something about EVM and you get excited about EVM. So you start applying it in EVM. So no matter where you are, whether you are junior in this area or very senior, I hope you will walk away with some new tips and strategies. Deal? Okay, another point that I will talk about is how you can unleash the power of EVM in your projects by following just 6 essential EVM building blocks that I would like to call it, based on how I implemented EVM on projects. So, and I believe there are the step-by-step things that you need to follow in order to have EVM in place and have EVM work for you. So I will cover that. And also, there are some important points I want you to consider when you are considering the EVM implementation in your project. So what point you need to consider in implementing EVM in your projects. And finally, I will share with you some resources for further education in case you're interested in exploring this topic further or increasing your knowledge and skills on this topic. So that's what we will be covering in today's session. So let me see if anybody, okay, the video gets stuck. I'm hearing that from Zahir. Again, please refresh your browser or reconnect if you have any video issue. But as I said, our member of the team is here to help you too. Okay, so let's move on to what earned value management is. To give you an idea about earned value, I want your engagement here, and please comment in the chat box here. Without knowing anything about EVM, can you tell me, can you define earned value for me? Just by looking at the word earned value. I'm waiting to see your comments here, and then I move on. So tell me what your definition of earned value is. Okay, I give you a few seconds to respond in the chat box. And I know I'm ahead of you, so it takes a while, so we hear you. Okay, so it seems that nobody wants to answer my question. Okay, here you go. I'm getting the answers from Tofik saying that, okay, it's now moving so fast. The worth of the work executed very well. So Adwa says, BCWP, please don't be too technical. We want to, that's right, but we want to know the meaning. Oh, Hans, hi Hans, glad to see you here. So the value of work performed or completed, perfect. The value of work that has been performed, net amount earned value from each man hour. So very good answers, great answers. So thank you so much for providing great answers. So to me, earned value is simple. It's just the value of your accomplishments, right? Earned value, the value of your earning, the value of your accomplishment. That's it, that's simple. So to give you a better understanding of earned value, let me walk you over an example to show you how earned value is calculated in projects. So here is an example of a very simple small project. So it's just 5-6 day project and the budget is 2,000. And this contractor has given us their planned curve, meaning that how they are going to spend that money over time, kind of a cash flow curve. So let's call it a plan curve here for everyone to understand this. So here is the distribution of their budget over time. So that's plan, okay? Now it's end of day 3 and that's what they're showing, the actual cost, meaning that how much they have spent on the job so far. So please engage in the chat box and tell me, based on what you see on this graph, what do you think of the performance in this project? So far, they have been spending less than what they plan to spend, right? So what does it mean? Is it good? Is it bad? Just tell me what you think and then I move on. So does everyone see the graph now? Okay, it seems that nobody is seeing the graph. Everyone's seeing my slide right now? Okay, interesting, because I'm sharing my screen. No graph yet? No? Interesting. No slides? Okay, interesting. So let me just share the slides again with everyone. It seems that for some reason, the slide sharing kind of got off. So I'm sharing my slides again. So please tell me if you see the slides right now and the graph. Okay, I see that. You see that now. Perfect. Okay, better not to get engaged too much in the comments because it seems that my slide sharing is getting interrupted. Perfect. Now you can see that, right? Awesome. Okay, great. So now that's the graph I was talking about. So far, as you can see in this graph, we've been spending less than what we plan to spend. So based on that information, what do you think? Are we going to save some money? Is it your reaction? I'm going to save some money or no? Tell me what you think about this. Okay, I see some no's, some yeses. Booty says yes. Jeremy says yes. Okay, great. So, and that's where earned value comes from. And that's what many companies are reporting to date. They are just comparing their budget with the spending. So, and if they're spending less than their budget, they think that, yes, perfect. We are on track and we are spending less than our budget. But the reality is we haven't seen something here, right? So here, if we look at it and ask, okay, wait a second, how much of this work is actually completed? It's great that you have spent less than what your plan, but how much of the work is actually completed? And the answer you get is only 2 units out of that 5 units that are supposed to be completed is completed. So now, based on that information, can you tell me how much the progress is for this project so far? So the progress, the actual progress is, yes, 40%. So when it's 40%, if I want to convert that to a dollar figure, knowing that my budget is 2,000 and 40% of the work is accomplished, can you tell me the value of my accomplishments here? That's right. The value of the accomplishment is 40% of that 2,000 or 800, right? So only 800 worth of work is accomplished. So if I want to add that to this graph, so that's the curve that shows the value of my accomplishment. Now with that information, how do you assess this project? Yes, I have been spending less than what I plan to spend, but I've been earning less than what I've been spending. If you just check that, my value of accomplishment is less than my actual cost. To help you better understand that, let's say your annual earning income is 100K, 100,000. And you are spending so much every month that, you are spending, let's say 20 grand every month. You have a wife who is spending so much money. So if you continue with that trend, what's going to happen? Yes, you need more money at the end, right? So that's the whole thing about this here. When we add earned value to this equation, and if we compare our earned with our spending, it shows that we are not performing well. This project is not performing well. So if we continue with the same performance, that's what's going to happen. We are projecting some cost overrun and, of course, schedule slippages. So this project is not looking good anymore, although throughout the time from the beginning to now, we were spending less than our budget. So that's the value of earned value. And by applying some metrics, we will figure out how much cost overrun and how much schedule slippage. So that's why earned value is very powerful. By just that simple earned value equation added to this project, you could see how everything has changed, right? And the power of earned value, it has been called the management with the lights on, because it helps you check the current status of your project and also forecast where you are heading to in your project, whether or not you're going to overrun or underrun. And also, it has been known for being a most effective technique that provides timely information on project performance. So it's really a powerful technique. And talking about giving you information about project performance, with earned value, these are the questions that you can answer. Are we ahead or behind schedule? How efficiently are we using our time? How efficiently we are using our resources? How much money we need to finish this project? What would be the forecast cost at completion? And a lot of great questions that every project manager and every owner wants to know in every project. Earned value give you the answer to these questions. But the question is how? How does it do that? Earned value, as I mentioned earlier, has some powerful metrics that can be used. So these are some of the metrics. I'm just going to fly over them. So there are some variance metrics that we kind of very high level went through the cost variance metrics in the example I showed you. So there are some variance metric, cost variance metrics, schedule variance that shows you the amount of deviation from your cost or schedule. And then there are some performance metrics such as CPI or SPI. Also, it has some forecasting metrics that helps you forecast the outcome of your project in terms of cost and schedule. But as I mentioned earlier, EVM is not just the application of some metrics. And that's what I was thinking first when I was exposed to EVM. No, that's something that many people who are not familiar with EVM think about it. Probably the industry didn't do a good job in terms of showing you the real value of EVM and what it takes to make it work. So although kind of metrics are the heart of EVM, but it's not everything. You need to have some foundation in place before starting the application of the metrics. And another misconceptions about EVM is, some people might think EVM works only on large government contracts. And probably that thought came back to the origin of EVM, that's from the Department of Defense and those government contracts that they required the EVM compliance on big government contracts. So they had to, every major government contract needed to follow 32 guidelines known as ANSI standard guides or 32 criteria, which recently they changed that to 32 guidelines, that they needed to comply with those in order to get the contract awarded and win the contract. So it was heavily involved within the government contracts, and it was not exposed to private industries until I don't know exactly, probably 10, 20 years ago. That's why many people might think EVM is just applicable to large government contracts, but it's not the truth. I have been applying EVM on many EPC, engineering, procurement, construction contracts, and it works really well. Another misconception about EVM is that EVM is useful only on cost reimbursable type projects and not on fixed price contracts. And again, if you have that thought, I hear you, because even on EVMS standards, they don't recommend EVM on fixed price contracts, and as if you are a contractor working on a fixed price, you are not required to have that full EVM in there, because your client doesn't require that. The reason is they are not carrying the risk. You are carrying the risk on those fixed term price contracts. So if you are carrying the risk, and if there are in major projects that the risk is so high, and every company that wants to manage their risk and control their projects require EVM, why not internally on those fixed term projects, fixed cost projects, apply EVM to manage your risk and make sure that you have some profit at the end of the day. So if your client doesn't need that, it doesn't mean that you don't need to apply it for fixed term projects. So that's another misconception about it. And again, there are a lot of that's a fuzzy areas when it comes to fixed term contracts and how to report that and all of that. But it doesn't mean that it's not applicable to those projects. And another misconception, EVM is frustrating and time consuming process with little value. And I think that is coming from people who probably were told to apply EVM. They didn't know much about EVM. Probably they had little education about it, or tried to apply it in projects. It didn't work. And then they made the decision that, oh no, it's just so much time consuming. It's not worth it. So let's forget about it. So now that's the reason I want to show you the real steps that you need to follow to make it work. So I believe all of those are misconceptions about EVM, and none of those are the truth. Do you agree with me? If you agree, may I get an amen on the chat box? Okay, another thing, that prove that concept is, we have a lot of standards around EVM. The most comprehensive one is ANSI standard. As I said, 32 guidelines around EVM that government contracts are following. We also have a standard by PMI, Project Management Institute. Also, AAC offers an EVP certification, and they have some guidelines around EVP and RPs, kind of recommended practices around earned value management too. And so another point I wanted to mention here, earned value has been around for such a long time, for over a century, if you didn't know that. So 129 years to be exact. And throughout the years, it took different names. And now it's what we know it as an earned value management, but it has been around for such a long time. So if something has been around for such a long time, it means that it's working, right? Because if it was not working, it would have been disappeared long time ago. But even there are proofs of DoD contracts that applied EVM, and it showed the improved project performance and the rate of success for projects increased. So definitely EVM is working. So if you have any other thought about EVM, if it's not working for you, probably you are not doing something right. So there is no wonder that EVM is a powerful technique. I hope I could satisfy that so far. But to unleash the power of EVM, you need to have a strong foundation. What is the foundation? What strong foundation you need to have for EVM implementation? That foundation is planning. Planning is the foundation of a successful EVM implementation, and most of us keep that very important step. So let me walk you over those fundamental building blocks for EVM implementation that you need to have in place before you even start applying the metrics. So that's what I'm going to show you, what we need to do. And there are 6 steps. I'm going to go over them and show you the steps that I followed in every project I was involved in that required EVM implementation, EVM compliance. So the first step, the first building block, is understanding and defining the full scope of the project. And I cannot emphasize that enough on the importance of defining and understanding the full scope of your project. You need to understand what's in, what's out. If you don't have a full understanding of the scope, then later on when changes happening, you cannot manage the changes properly if you don't know what's inside the scope, what's outside the scope, right? And if you don't have a full list of deliverables, if you don't know what's constituting that 100% of your project, then how on earth you're going to have progress? How on earth you're going to report progress and knowing how much of the work is truly accomplished? So you need to have all of the deliverables captured in your scope of work. And another point that many people mistake is they develop a CBS, cost breakdown structure, not a work breakdown structure to define the scope of their work. And probably the reason is this task is delegated to project management team or project control team, and their main concern is how we're going to charge our time against these codes. So they have the mentality around the coding structure and price structure, but they miss the big point that WBS is defining what needs to be done in the project, defines the what of the project. Later on, when you develop the WBS, when it captures all the deliverables, then you can restructure it to make it kind of align with your standard practices and to extract the cost breakdown structure out of it. But it shouldn't be the other way around. And that's what I have seen over and over and over again, that people make the mistakes of mixing up and confusing CBS with WBS. No, make sure you capture all the deliverables in your project. I have been in a project that client didn't know what they wanted, so we ended up developing a WBS for them, send that to them, no approval on that WBS. Then we provided the big list of deliverables that we thought they are required for this project. We waited for approval, no answer. And that project got canceled, after a few months. And when we went through that lesson learned on that project, I thought I'm the only one confused on that project. But I realized every one of the team members had the same feeling. They didn't know what was expected from them. They didn't know even what they have to deliver at the end of the day, because that important step was not followed properly. Although we did our best to provide that to client, they didn't know, they didn't approve that, it didn't move ahead. So my recommendation for you, if you're involved in project in regards to scope, if you're a client, if you're a representative of a client in charge of developing the project scope, make sure that you include the WBS that you want your contractors to report of, even in your contract documents. Sometimes we do a good job of writing a big narrative on what we want, but we don't go extra mile and put a WBS on how we want this project to be kind of organized and what are the deliverables we're considering. So as a client, make sure you include that in your contract documents. If you're a contractor working on a job, and even at the proposal stage, submit a WBS based on your understanding of the scope for that project. Submit the WBS along with your proposal so that everybody is in the same line when it comes to the deliverables and what is expected on these projects. So that's another thing I want to emphasize here. And right after the project started, right after the project is awarded, just a few days after, even the next day, hold an interactive session with all the key team members, including the project management and project control team, including the cost estimator, planner, scheduler, cost controller, anyone who is involved in the project control team and project management team, the project manager, and develop an interactive WBS with the team. You cannot believe how effective it is when everybody has their mind around this scope. When you have that interactive session, and we have done that in some projects and it was really good. When we had that interactive session, people started questioning about the scope. Everybody started to understand the scope better. If there was something we're missing from the proposal or from the contract, we're going back to the client and asking those questions. And one of the benefits of doing that was everybody were in line in terms of how to structure this WBS, how to charge their time against these WBS codes, and a lot of other great stuff, the next step I'm going to talk about. But and again, it doesn't need to be a one-day full session. It can be only 2-hour session. If you prepare something in advance, just then and bring it to the meeting and discuss that with everyone, or have it open for brainstorming and develop that WBS with the entire team. You cannot believe how effective it's going to be. And the next step after you define the WBS is establishing something known as control accounts in earned value management terminologies. and assign control account managers. You might call it something else in your projects. So as I described that, you will figure out what I'm talking about here. So control accounts, are selected point within your WBS where the performance is measured, where you're capturing your progress, where you're collecting your actual cost against, where the variance analysis is measured. So everything, these are point of controls. So these are like point of controls within your entire project that you define at this level, I'm going to charge my cost, my actual cost. At this level, I'm going to record my progress. At this level, I want to do my detailed analysis and variance analysis to understand what's happening throughout the project. So these are called control accounts. And again, that's another important discussion you need to have right after you develop the WBS with your team and select those points. And again, those points doesn't need to be at the lowest level of your WBS. That's another thing that many people make the mistake of. They go to the lowest level and then you're adding so much detail for control. It's not going to add value. And I hear you, if EVM is not working for you, it's adding too much work. It doesn't need to be at the lowest level. It can be at selected level. Let's say engineering. For example, if you're working on an engineering project, you have to question from your engineering leads whether or not you need to capture your actual cost at the deliverable, like at the drawing, PFDs, PNIDs, or you can charge it at the discipline level. So that's a question you need to discuss with your team to figure out what would be the optimal level for charging and for measuring the progress. You don't want to add so much work to your team when it comes to understanding the performance and understanding the variances. So this step is very important and again, often underestimated. Another point about it, you need to have someone assigned to each control account. So someone accountable for it. Going back to the example I brought, engineering. For example, engineering discipline leads would be an example of a control account manager who are responsible for that engineering portion. For example, process engineering lead, mechanical engineering lead. Whoever is responsible for that portion of the scope that you have defined as a control account, you need to have someone responsible for that. So later on, when you want to report your progress, or when you want to know where you are on that control account, that would be the person that would be accountable and would give you the information that you need. So that's another thing that you need to figure out. And for every control account, you need to have someone accountable. You don't need to have one person for every single control account. One person can oversee several control accounts. That's another thing. So another point, once you have developed your WBS, once you defined from that WBS what levels of control you are going to have and at what level you are going to manage and control your progress and cost, then you need to start budget allocation. I assume you already have a budget. Now you need to allocate those to each control account, because you want to measure the progress, right? You want to measure the variances. You need to have a budget for it. So now you have to go back to the budget and reallocate that to each control account and figure out the budget for each control account. So that's the next thing you need to have or do. The fourth step in the process is, develop an integrated and resource-loaded schedule. And I know someone might not agree with me, but that's one of the requirements of EVM. If you want to follow EVM to the T, that's one of the things you need to have in place, have an integrated plan. And one of the ways to do that is loading your cost into the schedule. And again, I'm not talking about loading the cost to each individual activity within your schedule. What I'm talking about here is, first of all, your schedule should be aligned with your WBS. So you should have corresponding activities for each control account. So you need to those WBS and your schedule should be fully aligned. And when they're aligned and when you have budget for each control account, it's going to be easy loading that budget to the project schedule and having that resource loaded schedule to understand, how you are going to spend that money over time. That's the primary reason why you're doing that. You want to know how you're going to spend that money over time. So, and the fifth step is baselining. Now that you have defined the WBS, you have defined the control accounts, you allocated your budget, and you have developed the project schedule, the next step in the process is baselining. And baselining is nothing more than getting the approval from your client or whoever is the kind of major stakeholder is on either of those items, on the scope, make the kind of freeze the scope, going back to the example I brought earlier. You even need to make sure that you send the WBS to client, get the formal approval from them. And from there, anything that's added to the WBS should go through change management process. How often we do that? Right? We really don't take the WBS seriously, and we don't consider that as a live document. But even for WBS, you need to get the approval internally, and whatever you are going to report to client externally as well. So that's one thing. You need to baseline, you need to get the approval. On the cost as well, again, it doesn't need, sometimes I'm talking about approval, it doesn't need to be for every single detail. You need to go and get the approval from client. Some of them would be internally with your team, and some that you will be accountable for delivering to client, get the approval from client too. And schedule, make sure that schedule that you have developed, the timelines, the links, the logic, everything makes sense. So, and once you are done with the schedule, get this stamp of approval from client that this is the basis of my plan. This is how I'm going to measure my time against this baseline. And baseline is very important. Those of us in project controls know that the best. Without having a baseline, we cannot measure any variances. We don't know where we are at every point in time. And how many times we are working on a project without baselining and it just continuous rework. So it's just very important. And the importance of having a baseline in earned value is something called a performance measurement baseline, or I would like to call it integrated plan. So what it is, it's kind of, as I showed you in an example earlier, it kind of shows you the plan over time, how you're going to spend your money, spending your budget over time. That's your performance measurement baseline. So it's basically a time phase budget to measure and monitor the cost and schedule performance. So you have done all of these steps to come up with that S-curve. So it's very important to have it, and it cannot be achieved unless you have that integrated cost and schedule in place to know how you're going to spend your money over time. So these are the 5 important steps of planning, but we are not done yet. One more step left. Another step that is left is we have to figure out the progress measurement methods for each control account, because going back to the earned value formula or the earned value concept I discussed earlier, earned value is the percentage of the budget, right? The physical progress multiplied by your approved budget give you the value of your accomplishment. If you know how much you have progressed so far in the job, and if you know how much is the approved budget, you just multiply that together and it gives you earned value, right? So in that equation, if you see my approved budget, we already know that number. If I know my percent complete, then I can figure out earned value. So to figure out the percent complete, you need to, first of all, determine the right methodologies for coming up with the progress. And you cannot have the same method for every single control account, depending on the duration and the duration of the control account and the work effort that are required for that control account. You will have different type of methods. But what I recommend is make sure that your progress, make sure that your progress measurement, however method you're choosing, is quantitative, not qualitative. For example, by qualitative, I mean you go to someone and ask, okay, tell me how much progress you had on this control account. They tell you 10% or something. There is no backup against that. It's just hard to verify that. It's a very rough estimate. It's like I ask you right now, tell me how much progress we had on this webcast so far. Can you give me some examples, some numbers? I'm waiting to get your answers. Tell me how much progress we had so far on this webcast. I just want to show you how subjective that would be. So tell me what you think. As the numbers are coming, you will see how different our answers would be. Everyone would have different perspective on the progress, right? Although we know it's 1.5 hour meeting, although we know so some might add the time factor against that. So let's say how much time we have spent, 40 minutes out of 90 minutes, so you can calculate the progress. Someone might look at the content and see how much time, how much content is left. So we can see different things, but as long as you quantify that, there is no issue with that. You can, again, there is nothing wrong with that subjective method as long as you have a basis against that. But the best methods are quantitative progressing, something that you might know as rules of credit, looking at the history and similar control accounts that you had on similar projects and how you have progressed through. And based on that, kind of measure the progress or set the progress at different gates. And based on that, calculate the progress, or if you're in construction, kind of units completed would be a very good thing to look at. But there are other methods, and I don't have time to go over all of that. My important point here is that make sure whatever progressing method you're using is you have a backup against that, and you know how you drive to that progress. And by the way, at the end of the day, progress is an estimate. So don't be kind of too much stressed about accuracy of the small control accounts, but make sure that on the big important control accounts, you have accurate progressing in place. But for small ones, again, it's not. At the end of the day, you know, they're going to roll up to the big ones and they're really be okay. You don't need to be quite accurate on the small ones if they're not adding too much value to the overall. But for the big ones, make sure that you have good measurement techniques in place for progressing. Another point, again, which is kind of underestimated on many projects I was involved in, is regarding LOE, level of effort. My question to you is how you define the progress for LOE activities. By LOE, I mean, you know, the accounts, control accounts like us, project controls, like project managers who are involved in the project from the beginning to the end. No matter what, if the project extended, we are there to support the project, kind of support disciplines who are there to support the project, but we don't have any tangible outcome. So for those type of control accounts, how do you measure the progress? Again, that's something that you need to discuss early on in your planning documents, how you want to do that. Like going back to engineering, some of the companies might prefer, the client might prefer to have LOE's progress not more than engineering progress. So let's say if engineering is only 20% on the entire job, how LOE can be 50%. And that's right. So that's one way of looking at it. If you want to go back to earned value and how earned value recommended practice is, for those LOEs, you know, we are on the job from the beginning to the end, so there's no schedule variance. So earned value is equal to planned value because schedule variance is 0. So that's another way of doing that. But as long as you have a good planned value in place, and if you have done all the steps I just talked about, then you can rely on that method as well. But I have seen many people for LOEs claim the same number as they claim for the actual cost. Let's say if they have $100 as the actual cost today, they claim earned value the same, and they don't figure out the issue until toward the end. Let's say they overspend on that budget and then starting to see very good performance factors. So sorry, I spent too much on LOEs, but I just wanted to mention the importance of defining the progressing method on LOE tasks control accounts when you are setting up these planning steps for EVM implementation. And although all of these 6 steps are very important, you have to follow them one after another. None of them are going to work if you don't have management support. And I'm sorry if you don't have management support in projects you're involved in. Your job is tough. You need to show them the value of earned value and show them the value of what you do to get them on board. But you really need management support to make the EVM work, because if it's not enforced from the top to the bottom, it will be very hard for you guys to implement it properly. No matter how good you do all the steps I just talked about, if management is not behind that, if they don't see the value of it, people see you as, extra work as waste of time. They don't see the benefit of it unless you do a good job of educating people and showing them the value of doing it. But again, you need to, if you are working in an organization that the management doesn't see the value, I have been on those organizations. And what we did, we started having meetings and proposals internally for management. If we wanted to introduce a tool, if we wanted to introduce a concept, the first thing we were doing, putting together a slide presentation, having a meeting with the management, go over that, stating the problem. Here's the problem we are having in this company right now. Here's our proposed solution, and here's why it's so important. And almost in all of the presentations we had, we got the management approval and buy-in. So I highly recommend, if you are working in that environment that you really have a hard time getting the management approval or getting the management on board, educate them, show them the value and show them why you need that. So again, it's important because also they need to provide you with the resources to develop the earned value management system. And by system, meaning that the processes, procedures, templates, and tools that are needed by an organization to do earned value management. As I said, earned value is not just metrics. You see that a lot of things need to be in place to have it work. So you need resources to help you with that execution. You need procedures, processes. And if you don't have management on board, it's going to be so hard. So that's one thing you need to have for sure, management support. Another important point is integration. And that's very important. And I know it's not easy to create integration between cost, schedule. But if you build off everything off of WBS, I assure you creating that integration would be way more easier. But the problem we face is that, the cost estimators start working on the estimate based off of, what they think the work breakdown structure is, or based on whatever standard they have, without having the WBS. Planner schedulers working on the job, they are mandated to start working immediately without even having that WBS in place. So then when we want to create that alignment, it's just a lot of back and forth and realigning. And so it's not really completely based on a solid WBS. But if you follow the steps I just talked about, if you start with a solid WBS and then build everything off of that WBS, the integration would be way easier. If you have everything based on WBS, you have cost for each WBS items, your schedule is developed according to WBS, so your life will be way more easier. Don't you agree? Another point that I want to mention that, sometimes, I learned EVM by Excel. And that's a good way to learn it, to be honest, because I learned by making mistakes, by having a lot of errors, by generating all these fancy graphs, by going through the depth of the formulas. And that's how I learned EVM. But I know right now, I'm not suggesting that, by the way. If you want to learn, that's a good way to start. But make sure that you use an integrated platform that allows you this integration and helps you with all these reports that you would like to generate out of EVM. So there are now a lot of great tools out there that you can consider, and you can shop around and see which one suits your company better. But here's my recommendation if you are going to select an EVM tool for your company or for the projects you're involved in. Make sure that the tool that you're going to select creates seamless integration between the cost estimate and control accounts. So that's very important to have that integration between. So the moment that you have the cost estimate, it can be converted to a budget, and you can have that control accounts in place too for the budget for each control account. Another one allows integration of the cost with the schedule. So there might be a lot of great tools out there that are very good in terms of cost, but when it comes to integration with schedule, they are weak. So make sure that it has the integration, it allows you to have the integration, and something that you can easily, like, let's say you upload XCR files from Primavera to that, and you can go back and forth between the tool and the Primavera. So it doesn't add too much manual steps in between. So that's what I mean by having a good integration of the tool with the schedule. Also, a tool that allows accurate cost collection. For example, if you're using SAP for collecting your actual costs, does the system you're shopping around is fully integrated with the SAP, for example, or whatever financial system you're using for capturing the actual cost, because at the end of the day, you need to have the actual cost in place to implement EVM. Another point is, does it have good change management process in place? So you can automate the change management process inside the tool, and you don't need to go too much manual stuff around that. And of course, having good visual and tabular reports. If you're using a good tool that have a lot of great stuff, then your work would be much more easier than kind of pulling that information from the system and generating that off in Excel. So if that tool has that, would be perfect. And I have already kind of last year, I interviewed several tool providers and different tool providers from scheduling to cost. I recommend you check them out. Let me just put the link here. So you go and check them out if you're interested. Again, I'm not going to promote anyone here, but in case you are interested, or if you are in a position to, let me just put that here as a sticky note so you see that. Okay, just give me a second here. I pasted something wrong. So you can go to the YouTube and check those videos in case you are interested to get more information about different. Here you go. Okay, thank you, Mary. Mary already put that in. Okay, thank you. So that's the link you see on the top as a sticky note. It just directs you right into our YouTube channel, where you can go and check. I think I have interviewed with Cleopatra, Ecosys, Deltec, in terms of the total cost management, and Prism G2. I think those are definitely there. And of course, there are other tools that go to the playlist for project control tools, and you will find it there in case that's something that you are interested. So going back to my slides, and I hope you can see that. Just tell me if you see the slides about Primavera right now. Okay, do you see my slides? Okay. Another one, again, although I say it's very important to have that integration and have an integrated tool, it doesn't need to be a kind of an outside integrated tool. It can be Primavera. If you're using Primavera, why not using that as an integrated tool? And if you have been working with Primavera, I don't know how many planner schedulers are here on the room, but Primavera has a feature, have EVM functionality that allows the integration of the detailed cost information into the program schedule itself. So it allows the cost and schedule integration in one platform. So when you have everything in one platform, it will be very dynamic, and you can just, as the schedule delays, you can see the impact on the cost, and it will be way more easier. And to be honest, it took me years to figure that out, and still it's a learning journey for me. But if you're interested in learning more about that, the good news is finally, after years of searching, I found a good instructor, and we developed a very comprehensive course on that shows you how to implement EVM in Primavera P6. And based on the market research, we believe that's the most comprehensive course out there in market. We haven't found anything that just specific about EVM. So this course for planner schedulers out there who want to implement EVM inside their tool and who want to have transparency in cost and schedule, that's something you may consider. And these are the modules that you can go through, and I will provide you more information at the end if you are interested. But based on, as we go through the course, I realized, and I asked the instructor, based on the information that, you put in Primavera. So does it really give you that transparency? Because when it comes to the scheduling metrics and earned value, some of them are falling short in terms of giving you the right status of your project in terms of the schedule. But when you implement everything in a scheduling tool such as Primavera, we realize all of those issues with the EVM metrics for scheduling metrics are gone, because everything is in one platform. Everything is quite visible and transparent. So again, if you are interested, check that out. That's the course already available for you. So now when you follow all of the steps I talked about, now you're ready. to start applying those metrics, to start collecting the data and using those fancy metrics. Again, there's nothing hard about EVM. I already provided you the YouTube channel that we have. You can go, and I have a lot of EVM videos as well that you can go and check. And I try to make it very simple for people. So there's nothing complicated about it. I don't know why industry make it so complex. So it's nothing really complicated. It just the setup, kind of those planning steps are important to make it work. After that, once you have everything in place, it's just a matter of learning those details of, the metrics and how everything works, how to analyze the reports and all of that. That comes with practice and, of course, some education. But by following those 6 steps, you are ready to implement. So here is my perception of the EVM implementation. I like to call it EVM implementation pyramid. Starts with management support. And as I talked about, then you need to have a scope definition, control account establishment, budget allocation, schedule development, developing an integrated baseline. And after you are done with all of that, and after you have an integrated plan in place, the next step is when you start kind of collecting the data and everything, you need to also make sure you have a robust change management process in place, because as we know, one of the big reasons that most of us are experiencing cost overrun is because we cannot make a good kind of control over our changes, our scope changes. So you need to make sure that you have a robust change management procedures, processes, and system, if you can, to manage the changes on this kind of EVM implementation. Another important point that you need to consider is you need to have an accurate progress and cost collection system, because at the end of the day, EVM is 2 things: % complete, right? And then when you want to calculate the kind of performance, you also need to know actual cost. Going back to the curve I showed you earlier, you need earned value, actual cost, and budget. So you need to have good means of measuring the progress and also good cost allocation, cost collection system. So you make sure that you have the invoices collected on time. You have a good method of collecting the actual cost. Otherwise, no matter how hard you work, if you don't have those mechanisms in place, it's not going to work for you. And finally, one of the things, again, I have seen over and over with practitioners is we get so busy in every reporting cycle to put everything together, to update the schedule, to update the progress, and to collect the data. And then when it's done, boom, thank God it's done. And then we hit the publish and send it without even taking the time to go over the report and analyze that. Why we have, let's say, CPI of 0.7, why we have CPI of 2, which is too good to be true. So a lot of that I realized, at least on the projects I was involved in, the team, doesn't take enough time to go through the steps, that are required to analyze the cost information, to analyze the report that they put their energy and they sweat around producing the report. But what does it mean to the team if you don't analyze it, if you don't understand how it works? So, and then effective communication, of course, you need to make sure that everybody in the team understand those metrics, understand what you mean by those data. So that's the pyramid of EVM implementation. So I hope everybody see that. I see some comments that some might not see that. So I hope that's everybody's seeing my slide right now. So that's kind of capturing everything that I talked about the EVM pyramid and what the steps you need to follow to have. So based on what I just talked about, you realize that EVM is a project management methodology for objectively measuring project performance, using an integrated schedule and budget. Employing the EVM is nothing complicated, but it requires fundamental project management in place to be able to make it work. And, you can do those EVM calculation on any project. Nobody stop you from doing that, but it will be so much unlikely to obtain the correct results if you don't follow the steps I just talked about in here. Now, if you're interested for getting more information and more resources, first of all, I promise to give you the copy of the slides and 1.5 hour of PDU. May I ask Mary to put that as a sticky note here so everybody can upload that. And so the moment you see that as a sticky note, there will be a link. And by the way, it was a huge file because the slides, I think, was only 60, I don't know, something like that. So it was 53 meg file, so I couldn't put it here as an attachment. So it's just a link that you can go and upload. So let me see if she has not done that. Let me make sure I put that there for you. I don't want to miss it. I don't want you guys to miss that. So here you go. Okay. Here you go. I just added that for you guys, so you can download that. And in terms of the PDUs are already provided in there, the code and everything. So if you are interested in, further advancing your knowledge, there are different courses we have available. So we have 3 big comprehensive courses available online. You can take them at your own pace. One is Essentials of EVM, EVM Mastery, and EVM Implementation in P6. That you can consider. So what is unique about this training, because I know you can find other EVM training out there, let me just be specific what they are and how they are unique. We believe they are the most comprehensive hands-on online training courses on the topic, and the instructors who develop those, have extensive hands-on experience in EVM implementation and actual projects. So they are not academic people who are just teaching you how to do it. People who have already developed those in their projects are teaching you how to do it. And 1 year support and access to the instructor. We don't want to leave our students alone in their learning journey. We always make sure that we are there for them to support them on their learning journey. If they have questions, they can ask their questions and the instructor will be there to support them with their questions throughout the course for 1 year. Also 1 year access to all the course material, including the PDF download, Q&A, and everything, so that, I know projects get busy. You might not be able to finish the course as the modules are available, but you have 1 year to finish those. And also another thing that makes it unique about this, we have great students who provided us great comments and had great success stories after taking these courses. Here are some of the feedbacks from them. For example, Magdi claims that the EVM Essential course is the best, practical and competent than others out there, and he's excited to learn the modules, and he wanted to recommend that to everyone. Again, Ryan, Project Controls Manager, as a result of the training, he was going to incorporate EVM practices in the project he was involved in. I didn't have time to follow up with him, but that was what he was ready to rock and roll in the projects. Marco thinks that the EVM Mastery course is the best course ever he had taken, because we challenged them so much. We have a lot of case studies on that course, so it just takes a lot to go through that course, but at the end you feel like a victory. It's just amazing. So here are some of the feedbacks from the students that make it unique. So if you are not sure, okay, you might say, great, but what if it's not for me? How do I know which course is suitable for me? Just let me tell you quickly about it. So for Essentials of EVM, if you are someone who is interested in having an in-depth knowledge of EVM, all the steps I talked about, each step is a module in that course. It's a very big comprehensive module that I put together based on my experience working on projects, and it's also aligned with EVM's standard, a kind of ANSI standard. So it gives you step-by-step process to implement EVM and to fully understand that. Like when I'm teaching a concept, I go to the depth of it so that you understand how each of those metrics work, so you are fully ready for your projects. And if you are a planner scheduler who would like to gain some cost control knowledge, that course is for you as well. And if you're also new to project controls or project management, that will help you so much with understanding the cost aspect of the job. Or if you're considering EVP certification, that will also give you the very good foundational understanding of EVM, so you can consider taking the EVP certification as well. For EVM mastery course, if you have some basic knowledge of EVM, then that course will be for you because it's an advanced course. It provides a hands-on application of EVM. To be honest, this course was first like a workshop, and our client liked it so much that wanted to have it turned on online training so they could roll that out to all of their employees. And it was a challenge to convert a workshop style training to an online training, but we did it, and it's now available. If you're interested to see in practice how to do it through doing case studies, 10 case studies you need to go through from the project initiation to the completion. So that's another one. And EVM implementation in Primavera, if you are already a planner scheduler or in the field related to planning scheduling and you're interested in implementing EVM in your projects and having a full transparency of cost and schedule, then that course is for you. And as always, we want to give very good offer to our webinar attendees because you guys show me every time, surprise me every time how committed you are to learning. So I don't want to leave you off without anything. So here is what we have for you. You can get up to $300 off on these training courses, but this is valid only for 5 days. So if you're interested, make sure that you check that out. And I already published that. So you should see that on your chat chat environment. So you can click for more information on those offers that we have. Just quickly, how these resources, kind of courses will be conducted. They're all online, so you can take them at your own pace. They are pre-recorded right now. We don't have them live anymore, but they're available for you for 1 year. And upon enrollment, you get immediate access to the first week of the training. Each training takes 4 to 6 weeks. I think each one of them actually 6 weeks to complete, and you will get 15 PDUs upon completion of each of the courses. You will also get access to the instructor for 1 year, access to all the training for 1 year, and monthly live webcast invitations, plus all the, right now we have live webcasts and you have it for limited time, but for our people, like our students, they have it during their access, so they can go to all the live trainings that we had before as well, and attending the live sessions too. And to access those, all you need is just internet access. That's it. So if you're interested, make sure that you check them out and make sure you don't watch the timer on that, because I don't want you to miss that out. Especially this offer is only for webinar attendees. We haven't proposed this offer to anyone else. It's just for you guys. So I hope you enjoy it. If you want to expand your knowledge in earned value and be better at what you do. Okay, with that, now I think we are ready to go to your questions. I saw a lot of questions were coming. So let me just also put the link to this as well in case you don't see that. I just see a note that the link is not working, so I'm going to put that as a sticky note so everyone will have a chance to see that as well. Just give me a second, and then I go to the Q&A. Okay, I put the link, the direct link to this registration page up there in case you are interested. Okay, now let me go to the questions. I have 20 minutes to answer your questions. As I promised, I'm going to start with the questions that were submitted in advance. So I have some questions that were provided. And oh my God, the way that I printed that, it cuts off the name. I'm sorry. But the question, I think, is from Paul, if I'm not mistaken. How is PMP earned value calculated? I think we already covered that in this presentation, how earned value is calculated. Another question we have is, what are the parameters needed to set in Primavera P6 to achieve EVM? And this question, I think that's best answered through the EVM implementation in Primavera P6. But what I learned through going through the course and conducting the course with the instructor was setting. Setting is very, very important when it comes to EVM implementation in P6. And if it's not set up right, the rest is not working. The formulas might not work behind the scenes. And I didn't know how much involved with the setting. Oh my God, that blew my mind. So if you want to implement EVM in P6, you need to watch for settings, and you need to know the ins and outs of settings. So that was one of the aha moments for me from that course. So if you're interested, check that out for more details on EVM implementation in P6. So we had some more that let me just go to the live Q&As, and then I go back to what we got here. So let me go to questions and answers here. Okay. So I have a question by Peter. Do you have any training on CFM, Certified Facility Manager? Sorry, no, not at the moment, Peter. All of our training right now, you can go to projectcontrolacademy.com/training. These are all the available trainings we have at the moment, not right now. Okay, so another question, how to measure earned value of indirect resources? That's a very good question, Tejas. I already covered that under the LOE section. So LOE kind of somehow related to indirects too. So you need to make sure that you have a right mechanism for indirects. Sometimes, again, the indirect, depending on what they are they like LOE? Are they having tangible outcome that you can measure? If not, sometimes you have to be very careful. We had a contractor working on the job for us that they were claiming very good performance and very good progress because they were including the indirect performance onto their overall EVM. But sometimes, it misleads the whole EVM figure if you don't have it right. So, and sometimes you don't need to, let's say, your profit, overhead, those type of things. It's recommended not to include them as the overall percentage or as the overall progress, unless you are required to, because it may make the overall EVM for the project look really good while you're struggling in the project. But again, it's a discussion going back to similar discussion I had about LOE and how to manage that. Okay, I think I started with the top. Let me go from the bottom, from the early questions, and then I come back here. So another question is by Engel. How earned value management must be carried on EPCM project in activities of procurement, for example, and if this should be managed in man hours or cost? Very good question, Engel. So for procurement, it's always tough, because you don't know really their progress that much. The time that they have something in place, they have the material or the equipment ordered to the time that it's delivered is kind of a big fuzzy area. So one way that we have managed that was through progress payments for that procurement contractor. So that's how we kind of figured that out. But to be honest, it's a very good question. And I haven't found an effective way when it comes to procurement and how to measure the progress for procured items. So that's how I manage that based on the payments. And because for the progress payments, it's based on the progress of that task or when you are going to pay that contractor. So based on that, I think that's the easiest way to manage it, but that's a very good question. I'm also looking for a good answer for that. If any one of you have experience doing the procurement side of earned value, progressing and measuring the performance for procurement, just comment here. So I'm also interested to know more about it. Okay. Another question by Mohammed: how earned value management must be carried in an EPCM project in activities, for example, and if this should be managed in man hours or cost? Very good question, Mohammed. In EPC projects I was involved in, we had reported EVM both in man hour and cost, especially if you're working on engineering where you have mostly man hour, but still at the end of the day, you need to report on cost too. But we had two, let's say, CPM, cost performance index. One was based on man hour and another was based on cost. Some like to call PF, like performance factor or something, for if it's based on man hour. Again, I'm not talking about standard terminology. That's the way we did it, but it depends on how you define that. But we usually had two columns, one for the cost, one for the man hour, and we were comparing those figures. So if they were close enough, perfect. If they were not close enough, like those where, let's say, one was 0.7, another was, for the cost was 1.2, then that was a big question mark. And we had to go back and figure out why. Is it the rate that we didn't put right? Or is it the cost that we missed or added? Kind of those type of things. So we always went back and reported both, but questioned anything that there was a misleading in between the two. Okay. Another question, can we use EVM in projects by, okay, the question is by Probcar, sorry if I'm not saying your name right. Can we use EVM in projects on oil and gas company in terms of man hours? Yes, I already answered that. I was involved in oil and gas projects mainly, and yes, we're doing EVM. So, and yes, we can have man hour if you're just engineering, or, but the project is, you know, it's not just man hours. Sometimes you have costs associated with construction, things like that, that you cannot convert that to man hour. You better report both. So that's my answer. So by BBU, cost breakdown should be in line with WBS. Yes, of course. The step 2 that I showed you, BBU, when you have the WBS, then CBS or cost breakdown structure is coming out of your WBS. It shouldn't be the other way around. So here I call it control accounts, but basically it's just the selection of the WBS that you select, that these are the control points that you're going to have, or we call it also CBS. So that's from the WBS, you extract that and you will have your, from the WBS, you will extract the cost breakdown structure, but definitely it should be in line with WBS. It should come from your WBS. Very good question. Okay, so another question by Bibu. It will be difficult to define a detailed scope at bid stage and break up the cost. I agree. So based on whatever information you have about the scope at the bid stage, develop that based on your understanding of the scope at that stage. But as I said, WBS is a live document. It's not something that you set up at the beginning and you don't touch it later. So as you go through the project, as the project evolves, you need to go back and add items to your WBS, adjust those, and the same with the cost. So that should be a live document. If you consider WBS as a live document, then there wouldn't be any issue with, anything even at different stage of the project. Another question by Mohammed Amer. Is control account the same as cost account? Very good question. Yes, we used to have, if I go back to the history, control accounts used to be called cost accounts, but they changed that to control accounts because that's a more meaningful term, because these are control points. But yes, actually they were cost accounts. But I don't know, again, I'm talking about the standard terms. I don't know how your company defines cost accounts and whether that's the same as control account. As I said, different companies might name that differently, but the concept should be the same. Okay, so another question. What is the difference between control costs and monitoring costs? To me, they are very much similar. So because when you have the baseline set, from that point, you're monitoring and controlling the performance against the baseline. So I call it monitoring and controlling. So I hope I got your question right, Mohammed. If not, ask again so I can answer. What should be the frequency of EVM calculation for tracking the project progress? That's a question by Arindam. And very good question. That's another thing you need to set up in your planning stage, how often you would like to report in terms of progress and in terms of collecting your actual and everything, kind of reporting the variances, depending again on the size and complexity of your projects. The projects I was involved in, we were doing that every 2 weeks. There are projects that they do that every month, but that's a discussion you need to have with your team on how often, or the client, how often they need the reporting from you, so that you understand. But as a rule of thumb, I go back to the schedule. For example, if you have a schedule item that is 4 weeks in duration, kind of the rules of thumb is you shouldn't have activities more than 2 times the reporting cycle in your schedule, because you need to know the progress at any point in time. You don't need to wait for long until you understand an issue is happening. The same thing with EVM. you need to structure your reporting cycles in a way that give you accurate and timely information, so you know when to take corrective action and when to prevent anything might happening. If you have it, let's say, every month for a project, you need to assess whether it's okay, whether it's good or not. You have to increase that to bi-weekly or something like that. But weekly, again, I don't know. I haven't probably I don't know for projects that they have done it weekly. I haven't, so I don't have good comments on that, but I believe weekly will be too much, because by the time that you collect, it seems that to me, if you have it weekly, every week you are collecting the data, every week you're analyzing the data, unless you're working on a sensitive project. Otherwise, bi-weekly or monthly would be the good answer. Okay, wow, a lot of questions. So what does LOE stand for? But Aroni, have you already talked about that? Level of effort for support activities. Okay, another question by Nehru. If EVM has been around for more than 100 years, why was it not embraced holistically by practitioners? Very, very good question. That was my question too when I read about the history of EVM, and I realized I started implementing EVM around 17, 18 years ago. And back then, our company was just starting implementing EVM. And when I was going and reading and studying about EVM to better understand how to do that on projects, the first thing I was exposed to was the history of EVM. And I was surprised. I asked the same question as you, Nehru. If it has been around for over a century, why we are just using it now? And as I went through the history of EVM, I realized that it was started with the government contracts, and that was just the requirement for government contracts. It was not exposed too much to private industry until, I think on the graph I showed the history and at what point it was exposed to private industries. But when it was exposed to private industries, the terminologies used in EVM was too complex. Like if you remember, the example I showed you was earn value or EV, plan value or PV. So every one of you can understand, but even now to this day, like actual cost of the work performed, ACWP, those type of things were so hard for people to figure out and understand. Even to this day, I don't like to use them. I escape them. So those complications make people feel like EVM is too complex. They didn't know what it takes to implement it, so they avoided that. Until recently, they simplified the terms of EVM, so it's easier for everyone to understand it, but it's a very good question. A question by Engel, what platforms do you recommend? Again, I recommend you check the video tutorials I have, the video interviews I have, but based on what I have seen, my recommendation is Kelopatra. Based on those criteria I told you, it seems that it works very well. Again, it's not well known for EVM, but it's a very good cost management tool. And it's a tool that's developed by cost engineers for cost engineers. So practitioners develop that tool. So that's what differentiates that from other tools. But full disclaimer, Kelopatra is a sponsor of Project Control Academy. So, and we only promote people who we believe in. So I just wanted to let you know. But again, make sure that you check the videos I have to get a better idea on different tools that are available. There are Ecosys, there are Prism G2, Deltek also I think have something. Make sure that you check those out. The videos are there already that I already provided. Okay, so another question. What about Microsoft Project? That's a question by Tony. Tony, I haven't used Microsoft Project too much, so probably I don't have a good answer for you. But based on my understanding, kind of P6, earned value management feature function of the P6 works very well. I'm not sure if there is any EVM functionality within Microsoft Project, and if it is, how detailed it is and how much capabilities it has. To be honest, I haven't seen much out of Microsoft projects. That's why I said P6, but that's a question to explore, whether or not Microsoft projects has good capabilities of EVM so that you can use Microsoft project for EVM as well. So I haven't, so I don't have a good answer for you. Okay, again, another question, the same. Let me see, we have a lot of questions. Oh my God. And sorry, let me go. Okay, another question by Andrew. What about quality or apportioned effort? Very good. I didn't talk about different progress measurement methods, but You have a very valid point, Andrew, for quality efforts, quality type of control accounts, where you're doing a Q&A and you're not going to measure progress or earn value for those things that are dependent on another task, especially quality. So yes, apportioned effort is a very good one, a very good method for quality. I didn't talk about that, but in the courses that we have, that's a method we talk about as well. Okay, oh my God, a lot of questions. Let's see, I have 5 more. We have a question, and sorry, I'm skipping the questions just to see which one is shorter to answer. So Faisal is asking how to calculate planned value. I think on step 3 or 4, I showed you how my recommendation is the planned value is basically the time phase budget, how you time phase the budget over time. So it's your call how you want to do that. The way I have done it was by resource loading the schedule, and the schedule give you the distribution of the cost over time. So that was the more accurate and dynamic way of coming with your planned value curve. So that's how I have done it. But again, it's up to you how you want to do that. Let me just, I think I realize I'm still so small here. Let me just do that so you see me here. Perfect. Going back to the questions. So yeah, that's how you do that for planned value. The question, how do I claim 1.5 PDUs? We already provided you the resources. Mary Joy, could you please put the PDU number here on the chat so people can see the PDUs as well in case they missed downloading the document? We have a code that you can claim PDUs there. Okay, a question by Zahir. Is there any particular method for defining the rules of credit for progress measurement? The best way I found for kind of rules of credit is going back to the historical data and expert judgment. So people who have been in similar jobs on that project, ask them how they see this task, kind of the progress of this task or the progress of that control account. At what point they can claim 10%, 20%. So the people can give you very good information who they have been on the projects before. So based on my experience, historical data and expert judgment will give you very good information on the rules of credit. The only bad thing about rules of credit is when you set that up and when you start measuring the progress against rules of credit, and if by some reasons you realize you made a mistake, then there's no way to go back and change your rules of credit, because if you do that, you're going to change your history. And it happens to me in one of the projects. Our instrumentation lead was junior, didn't know much about this project management stuff, gave us some rules of credit. We didn't validate that with other experts. So, and he always on the schedule was showing he is ahead of schedule, and he was good in terms of his budget. But when it came to metrics, he was showing bad performance, and we realized that and as we dig down, we realized that it went back to the rules of credit, and the way that he set that up, he was not giving himself enough credit for accomplishing different milestones. But in every report, we were just reporting to client. That's the reason we show underperforming on this part of the scope, but we didn't change that because, again, unless the client agrees, but if we do, we change a lot of historical data on the project. Okay, what was WBS, John Gill? Work breakdown structure. Work breakdown structure is how you structure the scope into smaller and more manageable pieces. So you start with a big item, your project at the top, John, and then you break that down into smaller pieces. So as you go down the ladder within WBS, you increase more details to your project, to your WBS, and each item within your WBS should be deliverable oriented, meaning that what would be the outcome that you are going to achieve. So it shouldn't be tasks. It shouldn't show how you're going to do that. It just needs to answer the what needs to be done in the project. So that's basically your WBS, but how you structure it, it goes back to either you have standard within your company on different projects and how to structure your WBS, or as I mentioned earlier, go back to with your team and have a brainstorming session and see what would be the best way to structure your WBS. Okay. The question by Gail, will you teach how to resource load in P6 as well as the EVM in P6 training? Will the class provide us the step-by-step from the start for the entire integration? Gail, as far as I remember, yes, that's a step-by-step process from the beginning, like showing you how to set up the system, how to go over the settings in Primavera, all the way to the implementation, you know, how to import the actual, how to measure, kind of do those store period performances and everything. But in terms of how to do resource loading, we expect you to know some basics around that. We go in some at a high level, and in the case studies that you do on that course, yes, you will learn to do that as well, but the instructor will be there to help you. Yes, we had some students who were so kind of not too experienced on planning scheduling, and the instructor was there to help them. But the course, again, is based on having some basic understanding and knowledge of Primavera. And if you don't, the instructor will be available to help you. But again, it's better if you have the good understanding of planning scheduling to take that course, because it's an advanced course taking you to one step further on how to implement EVM in P6. Okay, let me see more questions. The link for special ticket is not working. The question by Darius. So did everyone else had the same issue? I think we had similar issue in our previous webcast, and it seems that because of the big volume of people, when they click on it, the website is overloaded and it doesn't work. Please make sure that you try it later. Just save the URL, and Mary Joy, can you add the URL of the special offer we have for webinars as a sticky note again, so people can see that? Just kind of save it and come back later in case if it's not working. It should work. We tested that out, but at the same time, many people clicking on it, it just makes the website overloaded. That's how. Okay, I think I covered most of the questions. If there is any question that you have specifically want to have the answer, make sure you send me an email. I will be glad to help you. Otherwise, I think I covered most of your questions with that. Okay, so I think we are right on time here, and thank you so much, everyone, for attending this session, and thank you so much for being here with me until this last moment. I see many people already here already. Thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedule and being here to learning something new. I hope this session added value to you, and I hope you learned something here. So thank you so much. We will have another one coming soon, another webcast. So stay tuned for more training from us here in the form of these webcasts. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And thank you. It just means a lot to see that many people still live with us and learning. Thank you so much for your commitment. Okay, enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you so much. Bye, everyone.